There's cases where a movie does fan service right, and other cases where it does fan service wrong. Of course, Avengers Endgame is easily the most famous recent example of how to do fan service right, because Endgame earned that big, awesome ending with all the heroes coming in. It felt satisfying because that was what this franchise had been building up to. Everything got paid off so well. And because Endgame is concluding the Infinity Saga, it felt right to go back to previous MCU films. That fan service felt justified, earned, made sense. Doesn't feel forced, doesn't feel like just superficially jangling keys to get the audience interested. Also, Rogue One, I think, is the most recent example we've gotten from Star Wars, on Andor too, actually. I think both those are examples of how to do fan service right. With Rogue One, it actually has a lot of familiar Star Wars elements. It's right before A New Hope, but the movie also manages to feel different from other Star Wars movies or shows at the same time. It took risks, did different things, so it managed to stand out while also having a lot of familiar Star Wars vehicles, familiar characters. Yeah, there were a few moments, I will agree, that felt forced, but overall, I thought that movie did fan service right, unlike the sequel trilogy, and actually even more so than Rogue One. Andor, I think, does fan service right, because it includes Star Wars elements in there, but also very much does its own thing. It's clearly in the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't feel held back or chained down by Star Wars. Also, when I think about the movie Bumblebee, I think that movie does fan service right, because you have Bumblebee, Optimus Prime, other Transformers, Cybertron, but unlike the Michael Bay Transformers films, Bumblebee has good pacing. It's not too long. It doesn't have the annoying Michael Bay juvenile sense of humor. The action does not turn into meaningless visual noise. You don't get a bunch of CGI destruction, spectacle, buildings blowing up where you don't care about it. No, Bumblebee has action, but action that's much more toned down compared to the Michael Bay Transformers films. And then when I think about the show Loki, actually, like Loki and What If, I think are examples of how to do fan service right, because in both those cases they're clearly in the MCU. There's familiar elements in there, especially of course in What If, but the series does its own thing at the same time. Some episodes are stronger than others, to be sure. There are a few episodes that I'm not really a fan of, but overall, I was a big fan of What If. I think it did some things that were really creative. And when Loki spun off this familiar character and established new lore and mythology, it did world building right. It was really fascinating.